G'day guys, what's cracking? It's Ralph here, and yes, the Z8 has just launched. It's 11:30 at night, which is why I'm kind of whispering in hushed tones because my kids are like asleep there and there. So I've got to keep the enthusiasm and the excitement down. But I wanted to make a video that was kind of launched us into this new season of Nikon cameras, and I know already, like the announcement's been finished by an hour, and there's a ton of YouTubers already released stuff, and yeah, I guess we're all a bit bizarre and crazy, right? But first of all, in June last year, I made a rumour video about the Z8.
Of course, the Z8 is coming out. Of course it is.
And I was pretty close with a lot of what I said, just using the old noggin. So I'm going to interchange some of that footage with some of this footage as we go through.
So that when Z9, like the hype of it wears off, and when those who want to get it have got it, they'll bring in the Z8 and it'll just blow away the competition.
First of all, I want to say is that my prediction was March.
My hunch is that in March next year, they'll announce the Z8, and maybe in August they'll start to roll it out.
And we're now like a couple of days into May. So I was about 40 days off predicting when the camera would come out. I also said it'd be released in August, and they're saying it's going to be released at the end of this month. So I feel kind of bit chuffed. Now, interestingly enough, I just watched the launch from Nikon, the Z8 thing, and they had this big hype around it, and you're supposed to register, and the thing was going to go live at my 10 p.m, and at 10:09, I got an email to say you should log on and here's the link. So I thought afterwards, gosh, they're off to a really great start with getting ahead of the curve. Now I was just watching the website, and it came up, and we were good to go at about 10:03. So here's a look at the Z8. It looks pretty special. It's 30% smaller, lighter than the Z9, which is really, really important. It has no moving parts, and its functions and its buttons and all those sort of things are in the same place on the Z9 as they are on the Z8. So if you're a Z9 user or a Z9 user, as I was watching today, if you're a Z9 user, you can seamlessly switch over to a Z8. It shouldn't be much of a headache at all.
The body of the Z8 is rumoured to be bigger, so bigger in the hands than the Z6 or Z7 or so forth. Not as big, it won't have the vertical grip of the Z9.
The big news is that they're putting the same processor that's in the Z9 in the Z8.
Is the Speed 7. It can autofocus so much better, and it can handle the demands that you put on the camera so much faster. Better low light functionality, and most importantly, incredible autofocus and auto tracking.
That's the Speed 7, and the Speed 7 is 10 times faster than the Speed 6. So that's like game on, let's rock and roll. It's a 45 megapixel stacked sensor.
They're in prototype stage at the moment, between 45 megapixels, the rumours say, and 61 megapixels. What would you prefer?
It shoots up to 14-bit high efficient RAW, and that means it shoots really, really high quality, but the photographs that you get out of it are a third of the size of what you'd expect normally to get out of 14-bit RAW. So that is great news.
My personal preference, I think, would be 45 megapixels.
Also has the world's fastest scanning speed, which means you can take effective photos. You're not going to get much warp or loss of photos or loss of quality or all that sort of stuff.
I hope it has one of those internal curtains.
It also has a shutter curtain or a sensor curtain, just like the Z9, to stop all the dust getting in, and I am thrilled about that one. One of the things they're kind of stoked about, and I am too, it's got this pre-capture mode where you can put it on pre-capture, and let's say you're shooting something and then you see something happening, like, and then you go for it anyway. The camera's already shooting, and so you get 1 second of the photographs that have been taken without you knowing beforehand. And so you're like, that's amazing, but what if they're out of focus? Well, the autofocus in this is on the Z8 is going to be the same as the Z9. So are you going to buy, Ralph? Well, I'll tell you about that at the end, but that was one of the key indicators about whether I'd be interested in this camera or not. If it didn't have an autofocus that was pumping like the Z9, it'd be just like, why bother? And some of you at this stage are really annoyed or entertained that I call it Z9, Z9, Z8, Z8. That's just me. I'm sorry, you're going to have to get used to it. And if you want to get used to it, you should subscribe down below and like this video. It'd be a lot of fun, and I'll be thrilled with that. Moving on. The Z8 autofocus system is so intelligent that apparently you just poke your camera at something, you point your camera at something, and the autofocus has a fair idea of what you want to catch. So if there's a person or a prominent subject in your shot, the autofocus will immediately go to that and select it and track it throughout. So it's very intuitive and very, very smart. So if you're like, oh, there's a car there, and you pick it up and you've got it on autofocus on probably 3D tracking, it's going to go boom straight to that and pick it up. And you can have a fair bit of variation and customization about what your focus boxes look like and how they work, which is really, really exciting. It even tracks eyes when they've got sunglasses on. That's a bit mental, isn't it? There's 9 different focus detect modes, so you can shoot anything from like cats, and I don't know why I said cats first, I don't like cats, but birds or vehicles or fruit or human eyes. And if the human eye is taking up more than 3% of the frame, so a tiny little human eye a long away, it'll still pick up that human eye and zoom in the autofocus to make sure that's crystal clear when everything else might be a little bit blurry. That's pretty impressive, right? It even works well in low light, and they're saying it's so effective, this camera, that it works in a -7 EV equivalent. So when things are really dark and you think, oh, camera's not going to pick anything up, the autofocus will still work, will still be able to grab and capture and really harness the focus of that which you want to shoot, even when the light's just rubbish and it's dark and it's dying down. So that's very exciting. Also for astro users, it has the ability to like illuminate the buttons like it does. It has what they call warm display colors, which they have on this. So basically you can turn everything red so it doesn't like blind your eyes and stuff your eyes up when you're trying to look at the night sky. And it also has starlight view, which basically when you put it on starlight view and you're looking at the stars, you actually can make the stars pop out. It increases the highlights so you can focus in on them much more easily. The EVF is what they call a blackout free EVF, and so when you're shooting you don't have the shutter coming down, or that you know when it's like and your subject's moving and you can lose it. Well, with this, what happens is it's like you're going, but your vision is uninhibited, not inhabited, uninhibited, which just means you can track something much easier. You can make sure that which you want to take a shot of is in focus, is in the center of the frame, and is exactly where you've composed it to be.
They may choose to go with a mechanical shutter as well as an electronic shutter.
It does have an electronic shutter. There's no mechanical shutter present in this, but their technology is such that they don't feel like there's any loss of quality in any of the images, even when shooting on 20 frames a second RAW, or when you're shooting 120 shots per second on JPEG, the same as the Z9. And the Z9, I haven't experienced any sort of loss of quality or warp in any of the photographs, and wishing that they had a mechanical shutter. The electronic shutter has done me just fine. It also means less moving parts. In fact, there's no moving parts in this camera, which means that the wear and tear on those things really ceases to exist. Its shutter speed goes from 1/32,000 all the way up to 900 seconds. So that's a bit ridiculous, isn't it? It has a 5-axis in-body stabilization, just like the Z9, which gives you 6 stops of stabilization.
It has 6 stops, they're rumoring, of stabilization.
That's just trying not to make a lot of noise. I know. If you love this is just part of the channel, right? This is what happens all the time. You should definitely subscribe.
In terms of video, that sort of sensor with that sort of processor could easily achieve 8K. I think they might limit it down to 6K, and it might be oversampled, so that would be really helpful. And I think they'll go to 120 frames a second in, say, 12-bit RAW.
Video, if you've watched any of the videos out there about the specs of this camera, you'll realize it is 8K at 60 frames a second, and that is oversampled. And oversampled means it increases the detail in your 8K, especially when you zoom in. It's 4K at 120 frames a second, which is slow motion and epic. It's just glorious. I've loved that on the Z9. I'm not sure what it means for the 6K and where it fits in there, or even if we're going to get 6K at all, but I guess we'll wait and see what happens when the camera comes out. And the other question is, do you need 6K? If you're going to shoot 6K, would you just shoot 8K anyway, providing you've got a computer that can handle that and not die while it's trying to? My last video I had an epic beard.
As you can see, my beautiful beard is still with us for another week.
That I shaved off. Raised $4.5 grand for leukemia.
Facial nudity, here we come.
And now I have like no hair at all. But I'm just kind of thrilled that I'm in the studio, because I was going to film outside and it's just bucketed down with rain. So good call, Ralph, and onward we shall go. Now, the codecs that it uses, and I'm going to read these out just because I want to get it right. So you can shoot in 12-bit NRAW, ProRes RAW at HQ. You can shoot 10-bit ProRes 422 HQ and H.265, or for easier editing and processing, you can shoot in 8-bit H.264 and H.265. But the benefit of all of that is it can all happen in camera. Usually what happened is you need an Atomos monitor or something that could process it all externally, because the camera wasn't able to. The camera was able to grab hold of it but not process it. But now it can do it all in body, which is why they're calling it the hybrid. Because there's this idea of it can handle all video, can handle all photography. It's nice and light and fluid and just effective in your hands. And I haven't even touched it yet. It hasn't been in my hands at all. You can even take high-res stills off the video. So you're shooting video, you can just drop the shutter button and it'll grab a high-res still. I'm not sure what sort of megapixels that's at, but it's probably going to be around 12 or something like that. It'd be great if it was with a 45 megapixel, if they could grab hold of 24 megapixel stills while you're videoing. That would just be so cool. In terms of its recording time, it's breaking some limits there. It'll shoot up to 125 minutes in 4K at 60 frames a second, or you can shoot up to 90 minutes in 8K at 30 frames a second. So that is a significant leap forward, and such good news when you're sort of filming like documentaries, or you're filming a band or something that goes for a longer time than 29 minutes and 59 seconds. So really good news right there.
And I also think a fully articulating screen, so a screen that pops all the way around.
Has a partially articulating screen, yeah, like the Z9. So we didn't get the fully articulating one. Hopefully it's a bit better on this part, but it also has the ability to display everything, including your menu vertically, not just horizontally when you're using the camera. So that's some good news. A little bit of a win there. I am disappointed with that. Now, if you've looked at cameras forever, you know there's no perfect camera out there for you. So it feels like the Z8 is the perfect camera for me, except for the screen. But I don't want to be fussy. I don't want to be one of those jerks that's like, oh, but it's not doing this, because it looks like they've come up with an absolute banger of a camera for us to really enjoy. Now, if you're a portrait photographer, which I'm not, I do headshots and that sort of thing, but I'm not a portrait photographer, but it has some skin softening and some abilities to use different colors and shades and stuff, not in a ridiculous way, but just to measure them. Has a pretty cool name for it that I can't quite remember off the top of my head, because I'm not a portrait photographer, so I didn't pay a great deal of attention to that little bit. Yeah, but I'm not sure if portrait photographers will actually use the function of skin softening, but say keeping the hair sharp, because sometimes you don't want soft skin, and sometimes you just want to control that by yourself later on. So I'm not sure how portrait photographers are going to rest with that one, but we'll see, I guess.
They're rumoring dual CF Express cards.
So there's 2 card slots. There's one for CF Express Type B or an XQD card, and the other for an SD. And so they're thinking that the CF you would use for video, so pump your video into it. It'll be fast enough and big enough to store your video and your stills. You could probably also do a backup, and you could fix them and customize them however you want them to be customized. In terms of the plugs, there's going to be a full-size HDMI, which is really cool, because on the other cameras, the other Z cameras, you have a smaller HD, and it's just a pain when it comes to adding monitors and that sort of thing. You'll have two USB Type-C plugs, that one can for communicating, so communicating to other devices, and one for power management, so enabling your camera to be powered by an external power source. And it has function buttons, so it has the same functions buttons as this. It has the two here, so just two, not three. Has the one autofocus button down here, and then there's a function button on the back that you can choose to do whatever you like with it. So it has a lot of versatility, and what you like to see from a brand new camera, you want some functions, and you want to be able to translate what you have on your other cameras onto the Z8. We're nearly at the end. Yeah, it hasn't lasted too long, has it? Or maybe it has. Sorry if it has, but thanks for watching all the way through. You can get a remote grip that you can just plug into here, and you can operate separately, which is ideal when you've got this and you don't want to move it and you want it just stationary. You've got it perfect, whether it's for video or photo, and you can muck about out here with the different settings and shooting the camera. And it also has a battery grip, so you can make it look really similar to the Z9 by whacking that battery grip in there and giving yourself a much longer battery. My hunch would be that the batteries that they'll put in the Z8 will give us about 1,000 shots. They'll feel like the Z6 and Z7 batteries, in that they're really good, but they don't last as long as you like when you're running out of battery. Now, here's what I said about price.
Well, the Z7 right now in US dollars, you can buy one for $2,900. The Z9 at the moment in US dollars, you can pick up for $5,500. And so I'm tipping the Z8 to come in at $3,799.
And the winning price is $3,999. It's pretty close, wasn't I? And because of that price point, I am going to get a Z8 when they come out. A Nikon Z8, not a Nikon Z8. Going to get it all. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Before I watched and knew what was happening, I said to a mate of mine, I said to Pete, if it's got the AF, like that the Z9 has, I'm going to get it. And then I went away and I thought, if the price is hardly different from this, I'm probably not going to get it, because what's the point in getting a lesser camera if the price is about the same? But if they pitch the price halfway-ish between the Z7 and the Z9, then it's game on. And folks, that's what they've done. That's what I'm going to get. But I would love to hear from you. What do you think about the Z8? What did I get wrong in this video that you're upset about, that you want to vent about? Come on, tell me on down below. And what do you think? Will you buy the Z8? Why? Why not? For some of you, me and my channel, like, you're thinking, oh, it's out of my price range, but would it be something that you would save up for and you would get? And if so, why? What camera have you got now? And what are your frustrations with it? Let's chat. That's what I like doing on this channel, just having a bit of back and forth. Love getting to know you guys. Thanks so much. If you'd like to subscribe, that'd be epic. Please give this video the thumbs up, and I will see you when I wake up in the morning and I'm like brain dead. I won't see you then, that'd be weird, but I'll see if you've watched this video then. Thanks, bye.
I think Nikon will take the Z8 and boost it with the technology that they developed in the Z9, but it won't be as good as the Z9, because then what would be the point of the Z9?